Welcome to the Recipe for Results. This is your podcast extra for certification in the hotel, restaurant, and bar industry. Brought to you by HRB Universal.
You sit down at a table, you open a menu, and, you place an order for a medium rare steak or maybe pizza grilled chicken.
Right.
And 20 minutes later, the plate arrives, the food looks great, and you just start eating.
Right.
In that moment, your expectation of safety is completely absolute.
Oh, totally absolute. You don't even question it.
Exactly. You aren't sitting there calculating the probability of bacterial growth. I mean, you aren't wondering if the person who chopped the garnish used the same cutting board as the raw poultry.
No, of course not.
We treat dining out as this experience of leisure, but functionally, we are putting just immense trust in this invisible system. We assume the kitchen is operating with the precision of a laboratory.
We really do. And, that assumption requires a massive amount of hidden infrastructure. The messy, chaotic reality of a commercial kitchen is actually something the consumer is specifically paying to avoid seeing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because behind those swinging doors, you have sharp blades, open flames, intense time pressure, high turnover, and, raw biological materials that degrade rapidly if they aren't handled perfectly.
It's a lot of variables.
It is. And the gap between that chaotic environment and your perfectly safe meal isn't just bridged by good intentions. It is bridged by brutal, unrelenting regulatory compliance.
Okay, let's unpack this, because that brings us to the actual subject of today's deep dive. We are looking at a document that outlines a single day.
Just one day.
Yep, July 20, 2026. A ServSafe Food Protection Manager certification course and exam.
Right down in Florida.
Exactly. Being held at the 4 Points by Sheraton, Destin-Fort Walton Beach, starting right at 8:30 a.m. And on paper, it just sounds like a schedule for a corporate training seminar in a hotel conference room.
It sounds incredibly dry on paper.
It really does.
Right.
But this specific event is literally the front line of public health.
Yeah, it really is.
Today, we are going to unpack the federal mandates that force this event to happen, the psychological pressure of a one-day certification sprint, and, the intricate science of testing and food safety that goes into making someone a legally recognized person in charge.
What's fascinating here is that the location and the date might seem totally mundane, but they represent the localized execution of a nationwide mandate.
Right.
When you analyze the documentation for this single event, which is orchestrated by a company called HRB Universal, you are looking at the culmination of decades of epidemiology, FDA regulations, and even behavioral psychology.
It's a huge operation.
It is. The goal is to take a normal hospitality worker and forge them into a legal shield against foodborne illness.
So for you listening, whether you actually work in the food industry or, you just grab takeout twice a week, this is a look at what it actually takes to keep you safe.
Absolutely.
And to understand the massive weight of this event at the 4 Points by Sheraton, we have to start with the law. The documentation explicitly cites the FDA Food Code.
Right, specifically Section 2102.12.
Yeah, Section 2102.12. This is the legal anchor for everything that happens on that Monday, July 20th.
And that section of the FDA Food Code dictates that the person in charge, what they call the PIC of a food establishment, must be a certified food protection manager.
Okay.
But the really critical language in this code, the phrase that drives this entire massive ecosystem of food safety training, is the stipulation that this certified individual must be on duty and present at the establishment at all times that food and beverages are being prepared and served.
Wait, let's pause on that phrase. At all times.
At all times.
If a diner is open 24/7, or even just a standard restaurant operating from, say, 6 a.m. prep to a 2 a.m. close, that is a staggering logistical burden.
It's massive.
If the designated manager has a medical emergency or simply needs to leave the premises for 10 minutes to go to the bank for change, what happens to the kitchen?
From a strict compliance standpoint, the establishment becomes vulnerable the second that manager crosses the threshold to leave. The shield literally drops. If a health inspector were to walk in during that specific window, or, if a critical cross-contamination error occurred while the manager was at the bank, the restaurant is operating completely outside the parameters of the FDA Food Code.
That is wild.
Now, local jurisdictions enforce this with varying degrees of immediate penalty, which is why the course materials advise participants to review their specific local regulatory map.
Right. Because state laws differ.
Exactly. But the baseline federal expectation is an unbroken chain of custody over the kitchen safety protocols.
It makes me think of, It makes me think of an anesthesiologist in an operating room.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Like the surgeon might be the one making the incisions, right? Just like the line cooks are the ones searing the meat.
Right.
But the anesthesiologist is legally responsible for monitoring the vitals of the entire system. If they step out for a coffee, the surgery stops. They are the systemic safeguard. The person in charge isn't necessarily cooking every dish, but they are overseeing the biological vitals of the kitchen.
That captures the shift in liability perfectly. I mean, we are moving way beyond basic food handling here.
Because basic handling is just about the individual.
Exactly. Did the prep cook wash their hands? Did the dishwasher use the correct concentration of sanitizer in the sink? That's basic.
Right.
The person in charge elevates that responsibility to a systemic level. The manager is legally bound to ensure that the environment, the equipment, and every single set of hands in that building are operating flawlessly.
You have to see the big picture.
They do. They must anticipate hazards before they ever occur.
And those hazards are relentless. We aren't just talking about keeping the floors swept or taking the trash out. We're talking about microscopic pathogens.
Invisible threats, yeah.
Why does the FDA insist someone with this specific credential be physically present? What is the actual mechanism of the threat they are monitoring?
The primary threat is exponential biological growth.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, consider pathogens like Salmonella, E. coli, or norovirus. Bacteria reproduce through binary fission, meaning one cell divides into two, two into four, four into eight, and so on.
Just doubling constantly.
Right. In ideal conditions, what the industry calls the temperature danger zone, which is between 41 and 135 degrees Fahrenheit, certain bacteria can double in number every 20 minutes.
Every 20 minutes. That's incredibly fast.
It is. So if a delivery of raw chicken is left on a loading dock for an hour because the kitchen is in the middle of a crazy lunch rush, the bacterial load on that meat might reach a threshold that normal cooking temperatures cannot fully neutralize.
Oh, wow.
Especially if the pathogen produces heat-resistant toxins.
So even if you cook it to the right temp, the toxins are still there.
Exactly. The bacteria might die, but the toxins they created while sitting on that loading dock can still make you violently ill.
So the person in charge is the one who has to break away from the chaos of the lunch rush, recognize the delivery is just sitting there, and legally mandate that it gets tempted and refrigerated immediately.
Right.
They are managing time and temperature, which are like the main variables in bacterial growth.
Precisely. They are the human intervention in a naturally degrading biological process. If you leave food to its own devices, it just spoils.
Right. Nature takes its course.
Yeah. The manager is trained to enforce interventions. Things like rapid cooling, holding temperatures, strict physical separation of raw and ready-to-eat foods to prevent cross-contamination.
Which explains why these training events are happening constantly.
Oh, they are everywhere.
Because if the law requires this level of supervision at all times, a restaurant can't just rely on one person. They need a deep bench of certified managers.
A very deep bench.
When someone quits or gets promoted, there is this vacuum that has to be filled immediately, which turns an event like the July 20th class in Fort Walton Beach into critical local infrastructure.
Absolutely. The hospitality industry is characterized by incredibly high turnover rates.
Notoriously high.
The relentless pace, the physical demands, and the tight profit margins mean people move between jobs very frequently. So when a certified manager leaves, a ticking clock starts for the restaurant owner to certify a replacement before they are caught operating out of compliance.
And face massive fines where it gets shut down.
Exactly. This is what drives the business model of organizations like HRB Universal. They provide the necessary bottleneck through which every aspiring manager must pass to get that legal shield.
But the FDA doesn't just let anyone print a certificate and hand it to a cook, right?
Definitely not.
Because the source material for this event stresses that the ServSafe program is accredited by the American National Standards Institute, ANSI, and the Conference for Food Protection, or the CFP.
The gold standard.
Yeah. And I want to dig into how a test actually gets validated. Because a lot of people might assume an exam is just, a bunch of random multiple choice questions a teacher thought up over the weekend.
That's a huge misconception. The distinction between a standard quiz and an ANSI accredited exam is literally the difference between an opinion and a scientifically validated measurement.
Okay, so what does ANSI actually do?
Well, ANSI does not write the test. They audit the methodology of the organization creating the test. It is an exhaustive psychometric evaluation.
Psychometric?
Yes, the psychological theory of measurement. They want to ensure the exam is fair, valid, and reliable.
break down those terms for me. I always get skeptical when I hear big acronyms like ANSI or CFP. It can sound like bureaucratic red tape. Is this just a giant hoop to jump through? How do you scientifically prove a multiple choice question is reliable?
It comes down to statistical analysis of how questions perform in the real world.
Okay.
When a new question is introduced, it is typically beta tested first. It won't count toward the candidate's actual score, but the developers will quietly analyze the data behind it.
Oh, like a dummy question.
Exactly. If the top performing candidates, the ones who ace the rest of the exam, consistently get a specific dummy question wrong, that question gets flagged.
Why? Because they should have known it.
Right. It implies the question is confusing, poorly worded, or maybe testing obscure trivia rather than functional knowledge. Conversely, if every single person gets a question right, it is too easy and doesn't actually measure competency.
So they are looking for a perfect bell curve of difficulty.
Precisely.
They need questions that accurately separate the people who truly understand the underlying science of food safety from the people who just, tried to memorize a cheat sheet in the parking lot.
Exactly. And they analyze what we call the distractors.
The distractors, right? Like the incorrect multiple choice options.
Yes. A good distractor isn't just a randomly wrong answer. It is an answer that reflects a common real-world misconception.
Oh, I see.
If you ask for the minimum internal cooking temperature of poultry, the wrong answer shouldn't be 400 degrees or 20 degrees. Anyone can guess that those are wrong.
Right, that's too obvious.
The distractors will be 145 or 155 degrees, which are the correct temperatures for pork or ground beef. They test whether the candidate can discern the specific nuances required for different biological risks.
That is so smart. And the material notes that the National Restaurant Association develops this with the input of food service industry experts based on actual job tasks.
Yes, the job task analysis.
So this isn't just academics in a sterile lab testing theoretical biology. This is industry-driven.
The job task analysis is what really grounds the exam in reality. Before they write a single question, industrial organizational psychologists will literally shadow restaurant managers.
Really? Just watch them work?
They conduct extensive interviews and observational studies to document the literal physical tasks a manager performs on a shift.
Give me an example.
Okay. They might observe that managers frequently have to calibrate bimetallic stemmed thermometers.
Right, the little metal ones you stick in a steak.
Exactly. And they have to calibrate them constantly because the aggressive commercial dishwashing cycles knock them completely out of calibration.
Oh, I never thought of that. The heat and pressure of the dishwasher messes up the thermometer.
Exactly. Therefore, knowing how to calibrate a thermometer using the ice point method becomes a heavily weighted subject on the exam because it's a real task they perform daily.
So they test the environment, not just the science. They know the reality of the kitchen.
They do.
They know a prep cook might accidentally grab the sanitizer bucket towel to wipe down a cutting board that was just used for raw fish, and then, use that same towel on a salad station.
A classic cross-contamination nightmare.
The experts designing this test have lived these nightmares.
They have. That real-world grounding is what elevates the credential. When an employer or a health inspector sees that ANSI-CFP mark, they know the individual wasn't just tested on abstract concepts. They were tested on scenarios directly extracted from the chaos of a working kitchen.
Which makes the schedule for July 20th look even more intimidating, to be honest.
It's an intense day.
Let's look at the actual timeline for the candidates walking into the 4 Points by Sheraton. The check-in is this incredibly tight 15-minute window starting at 8:30 a.m. Then from 8:45 a.m. to 1:00 p.m., they sit through what the documentation explicitly calls a fast-paced 4-hour review course.
The operative word there is definitely review. The documentation makes a very sharp caveat. Self-study is required prior to attending because all topics are not covered in the 4-hour review.
Right, they have to use the HRB Universal Training Portal beforehand.
Exactly. If a candidate attempts to use those 4 hours to learn the material for the very first time, the cognitive load will completely overwhelm them.
I can imagine. I mean, you're sitting in a hotel conference chair, probably drinking bad coffee, and someone is throwing rapid-fire regulatory data at you for 4 hours straight.
It's a fire hose of information.
What specifically is being reviewed in that window? Like, what does a fast-paced synthesis of the FDA food code actually sound like?
It would be an intense integration of biological thresholds and operational protocols.
Okay.
They are reviewing the exact parameters of the temperature danger zone we talked about. They are going over complex cooling procedures. For instance, the legal requirement that a large batch of hot food must be cooled from 135 degrees to 70 degrees within 2 hours.
Okay, 2 hours.
And then from 70 degrees down to 41 degrees or lower in the next 4 hours.
Wait. Why is it split into two different time frames like that? Why not just say, cool it down in 6 hours total?
Because of the specific behavior of pathogens. The range between 135 degrees and 70 degrees is where bacteria reproduce the fastest.
Oh, so that's the peak danger zone.
It is the absolute most critical window of vulnerability. If a massive pot of chili takes 3 hours just to get down to 70 degrees, it has lingered in that peak danger zone for way too long.
And the bacterial load just explodes.
Exactly. And the bacterial load might have grown to toxic levels. Even if you cool it down properly after that, like get it to 41 degrees, the toxins produced by the bacteria might still remain.
Because the toxins don't die when it gets cold.
Right, and some toxins are not even destroyed by reheating the food later. So the 4-hour review just hammers these precise biological realities into the candidate's operational memory.
The pressure is wild. You don't show up on July 20th to learn how to play the game. You show up to review the playbook one last time before the championship match.
That is a perfect way to look at it. It's exactly like a sports training camp or a flipped classroom model.
So what does this all mean for the candidate at 10 p.m.? You have 4 hours of this intense data integration, and then at 1 o'clock, a 1-hour lunch break.
The infamous lunch break.
I look at that lunch break not as a time to relax, but as an hour of high-stakes mental recalibration. I'm just picturing people sitting in their cars in the hotel parking lot, eating a sandwich, just panic scrolling through the HRB Universal app on their phones.
Oh, absolutely. They are desperately trying to lock down the difference between cleaning and sanitizing, or trying to memorize the specific symptoms of hepatitis A.
The psychological environment of that lunch hour has got to be fraught.
It is. They're transitioning from passive absorption to active recall, and they know that at 2:30 p.m., the protocol shifts entirely.
Yeah, the documentation is extremely firm on this. It says, once the exam starts, no one will be allowed in the exam room.
The doors literally lock.
They just lock them out.
Yes, which makes perfect sense given what we explained about the ANSI accreditation. You cannot have people wandering in 15 minutes late, rustling papers, dropping their bags, and disrupting the environment.
It would ruin the concentration of everyone else.
Exactly. It compromises the security and the standardized conditions of the test. Standardized conditions are vital for psychometric validity.
Meaning everyone has to have the exact same experience.
Exactly. Every candidate must experience the exact same testing environment. If one room is highly disruptive and another is perfectly silent, the scores are no longer comparable.
Let's talk about the mechanics of the test itself, because HRB Universal handles this in a very modern way. The exam is administered electronically, and they allow a BYOD policy. Bring your own device.
Right, BYOD.
You can take this highly secure federal compliance exam on your personal iPad or laptop. And if you don't have one, they provide an Amazon Fire tablet for you to use.
The inclusion of provided hardware is an excellent measure for accessibility, ensuring that a lack of personal technology doesn't act as a barrier to professional certification.
Yeah, that's a great feature.
However, allowing personal devices introduces a massive security challenge.
That was my immediate question. Here's where it gets really interesting. They let you bring your own device for a highly secure exam. What prevents me from opening a new tab on my MacBook and just searching for proper holding temperature for cooked rice?
The integrity of a BYOD electronic exam relies entirely on secure testing software, which is often referred to as a lockdown browser.
A lockdown browser.
Yes. When the candidate launches the exam, this software requests system-level privileges on their device. It effectively sandboxes the entire operating system.
So it takes over the computer.
Functionally, yes, for the duration of the exam. The software disables the clipboard, meaning you cannot copy or paste text. It blocks all keyboard shortcuts. It kills background applications. So a messaging app or a screen sharing program cannot run simultaneously.
Wow, they really lock it down.
It even disables the ability to use multiple monitors, ensuring the candidate's field of vision is restricted to the primary screen. The exam environment is isolated from the rest of the device's capabilities until that final answer is submitted.
It's a digital quarantine.
That's a great term for it.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
It allows the convenience of modern hardware without sacrificing the strictness of the ANSI audit. For you listening, if you hate feeling overwhelmed by info overload, Think about how tools like this mobile app and digital portals break down massive regulatory text into digestible pieces leading up to exam day.
It really modernizes the whole process.
It does, and this focus on modern accessibility extends beyond just the technology. I want to highlight the language options provided in the source material because they paint a really vivid picture of who is actually working in these kitchens.
The electronic exams are available in English, Spanish, Chinese, and French Canadian.
And what if they need a paper exam?
If a candidate requests a paper exam 20 days in advance, the options expand to include Japanese, Korean, and large print.
When you look at that list, you realize that the food service industry is arguably one of the most culturally and linguistically diverse sectors in the economy.
Without a doubt.
But food safety is a universal language. I mean, the bacteria on a piece of raw pork doesn't care if the cook speaks Mandarin or English.
That is the core philosophy behind offering robust language support. The objective of the exam is to test a candidate's mastery of food safety protocols, not their fluency in English.
Right.
However, translating a highly technical regulatory exam is incredibly difficult.
I would imagine the legal phrasing makes translation an absolute nightmare.
It requires intense linguistic precision. Consider the English terms clean and sanitary.
Okay.
In a casual conversation, they might be used interchangeably. Like you might say, is this kitchen clean? Or is this kitchen sanitary? And you mean the same thing.
Yeah, I'd use them interchangeably.
But in the FDA food code, they represent entirely different chemical states.
Really? What's the difference?
Cleaning is simply the removal of visible soil and food residue. You wipe the crumbs off a table, it is clean.
Okay.
Sanitizing is the reduction of pathogens to safe levels using heat or chemicals.
Oh, so a table can be clean but completely unsanitary.
Exactly. If a translator uses a colloquial term in Spanish or Korean that conflates those two concepts, the candidate might choose the wrong answer based on a linguistic quirk rather than a lack of scientific understanding.
That would be so unfair.
It would. The translators have to map precise technical jargon across linguistic boundaries to ensure the exam remains fair for every single language variant.
Which highlights why that paper exam rule is so strict. The documentation says if you want a paper exam, say, in Korean or large print, you have to request it 20-plus days prior to the exam date with a paid registration.
Yes, the 20-day rule.
In an era where I can download an app in 2 seconds, a 3-week wait for a paper booklet feels almost archaic. Why the long lead time?
It comes back to the chain of custody we mentioned earlier. A digital exam can be deployed securely over an encrypted connection in milliseconds.
Right.
A physical paper exam, especially an accredited one with multiple language variants, requires a physical logistical pipeline.
Like transporting evidence in a legal case.
Very similar. The testing organization has to securely print the specific booklet. It must be shipped in a tamper-evident package to the registered proctor.
Okay.
The proctor must store it in a secure location until exactly 2:00 p.m. on July 20th. After the exam, the booklet and the answer sheet must be resealed and shipped back for grading and destruction.
You'd destroy them.
Yes, to prevent the questions from leaking. If a booklet goes missing, the entire version of that exam is compromised globally. The 20-day window provides the necessary buffer to execute those physical security protocols without a single error.
The logistics are incredibly rigid, but then you look at the ticketing and registration, and suddenly things become very fluid.
Yes, they do.
The ticket price listed for this event is $199, but it is specifically categorized as late registration, under 5 days.
The prominence of an under 5 days registration tier speaks directly to the operational realities we discussed earlier. The restaurant industry does not run on quarterly planning cycles. It runs on immediate crises.
I can totally see that. A shift manager gets fed up on a Friday night, throws their apron down, walks out, and suddenly the owner realizes they don't have a legally compliant person in charge for the upcoming week.
They are in a sheer panic.
They don't have 20 days to request a paper test. They have a matter of hours to find a testing center, register their sous chef, and get them certified.
Exactly.
The $199 late fee is basically the cost of operational emergencies.
It is a premium paid for agility. The testing organization has to absorb the administrative burden of slotting a new candidate into a highly regulated environment at the 11th hour. And this fluidity extends to the physical space itself.
Right. The location detail is fascinating to me. It says the course is at the 4 Points by Sheraton, Destin-Fort Walton Beach. But there's a note that says the final location will be set once registration has closed and is subject to change. to ensure proper social distancing for participants.
Right.
They literally tell participants they have to check their email or the HRB Universal app for the final room details just before the event. It's like booking a secret pop-up dinner, except instead of a multi-course tasting menu, it's a high-stakes federal compliance exam.
That's a funny way to look at it.
Yeah.
But utilizing a venue like the 4 Points by Sheraton provides the organizers with modular space.
What do you mean?
Hotels are designed with retractable walls and various ballroom configurations. By delaying the final room selection until registration completely closes, they can analyze the final headcount, including all those panic-induced late registrants who bought that $199 ticket.
Oh, I see.
And then they can scale the physical footprint of the room to comply with public health guidelines for social distancing.
It is brilliant, really. I mean, they are teaching a course on public health, so they have to physically model public health best practices right there in the room.
Exactly. They have to walk the walk.
But put yourself in the shoes of the candidate. You are already stressed out of your mind about memorizing the pH level at which bacterial growth halts. You are stressed about the 4-hour review and the locked doors at 2 p.m.
The anxiety is high.
Now you arrive in the lobby of the 4 Points by Sheraton at 8:15 a.m. and you have to frantically check the HRB Universal app just to figure out if you were in Ballroom A or Conference Room C.
It adds a layer of tension.
The app isn't just a study guide. It is your lifeline to even finding the actual test.
The entire morning is essentially designed to test a candidate's ability to navigate pressure, process rapid instructions, and execute protocols. In a way, the stress of the logistics serves as a soft precursor to the stress of managing a kitchen.
That makes me wonder about the people designing this whole experience. Who is HRB Universal?
They are quite an interesting organization.
Because they aren't just a faceless testing center renting out hotel space, right?
Yeah.
The documentation lists a wide array of their corporate services, and it proves they are deeply embedded in the trenches of the hospitality industry.
Their portfolio of services is highly illustrative. Beyond proctoring ServSafe exams, they conduct third-party food safety audits.
Okay.
They offer OSHA compliance inspections, they provide mystery shopping services, and even temporary management.
Temporary management, what does that mean?
It means they can supply highly trained personnel to physically run an establishment in a crisis if an entire management team walks out.
Wow, so they really do step into the fire. And the OSHA compliance piece is huge, too. That moves beyond just food safety and into the physical safety of the building itself.
Yes, worker safety.
We're talking about preventing slips on greasy tile floors, managing the chemical hazards of industrial degreasers, or dealing with the ergonomics of lifting 50-pound bags of flour.
Exactly. And their involvement in HACCP plan development is particularly noteworthy.
Okay, break down HACCP for me. I know it stands for Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point, but what does it actually look like in practice?
HACCP is a management system in which food safety is addressed through the analysis and control of biological, chemical, and physical hazards. It actually originated in the 1960s.
Really? That long ago?
Yes, when NASA partnered with the Pillsbury Company to create completely sterile, crumb-free food for the space program.
For astronauts.
Exactly. They realized that simply testing finished products wasn't enough. They had to engineer safety into the manufacturing process itself from step one.
So it is literally aerospace engineering applied to a commercial kitchen.
Precisely. In a restaurant, a HACCP plan maps the entire flow of food. Let's trace a hamburger, for instance.
Okay, let's do it.
The first critical control point is receiving. Is the raw meat delivered below 41 degrees?
Check.
The next point is storage. Is it placed on the bottom shelf of the walk-in cooler so raw juices cannot drip onto fresh vegetables?
Check.
The next is cooking. Does the center of the patty reach 155 degrees for at least 17 seconds?
Wow, 17 seconds exactly.
A HACCP plan identifies all these specific points, establishes strict limits, and creates monitoring procedures for every single item on the menu.
So HRB Universal isn't just teaching a textbook. They are out in the field helping restaurants build these NASA-level flowcharts for their menus.
They are very hands-on.
And the source material reveals something even more compelling. They actually operate their own brands.
They do.
They run Crafted Food and Beverage Company, Blue Moon Cookie and Coffee Company, Martinis on the Mountain, and Epicurean Market and Grill.
This is the ultimate validation of their curriculum. They're operators, not just theorists in an ivory tower.
Right.
When an instructor at that 4 Points by Sheraton stands up and explains how to train a dishwasher to use a 3-compartment sink, it is informed by the fact that HRB Universal actually hires, trains, and manages dishwashers in their own coffee shops and markets.
They know the struggle.
They have to meet the exact same payrolls, survive the exact same health inspections, and manage the exact same high-turnover workforce as the candidates sitting in the room.
It gives them total credibility. Because if a candidate says, you don't understand how hard it is to get line cooks to temp the chicken during a Friday night rush, the HRB Universal instructor can say, actually, I do. We run a grill. Here is the operational system we use to force compliance.
Exactly. It changes the entire dynamic of the 4-hour review from a dry lecture to a peer-to-peer strategy session.
It bridges the gap between regulatory theory and operational reality. And it connects to the overarching mission stated in the materials.
Mm-hmm.
They aim to empower managers to create a lasting culture of food safety.
A culture of food safety.
Now, I want to push back on that word, culture.
Okay. Why?
Well, a culture is a deeply ingrained set of shared values and behaviors, right? It's something that takes a long time to build. You can teach some of the biological mechanism of salmonella in 4 hours. You can teach them the legal parameters of the FDA food code. But can you really build a culture in a hotel conference room on a single Monday morning in July?
You cannot. And that is the unspoken reality of the certification process. The event on July 20th provides the vocabulary, the legal framework, and the ANSI-validated blueprint. But the culture is not built in the 4 Points by Sheraton.
Where is it built then?
The culture is built when the candidate passes the exam, walks out of those locked doors at 4:00 p.m., and returns to their restaurant.
The manager's the one who has to lay the bricks.
Yes. The manager builds the culture through relentless daily repetition. It is built when the manager stops a busy line cook and forces them to change their gloves after touching raw pork.
Even when they're in the weeds.
Especially then. It is built when the manager stays late to deep clean the ice machine because they understand the risks of mold accumulation. The certification gives them the authority and the knowledge. The culture is forged by their willingness to enforce that knowledge under intense pressure.
It is a massive burden to place on one individual's shoulders, which really brings us all the way back to where we started. We looked at a schedule for a single ServSafe event in Fort Walton Beach, and we uncovered a massive, highly orchestrated ecosystem of safety.
It goes so deep.
We explored the rigid legal anchor of the FDA food code, demanding a certified person in charge at all times.
And we examine the scientific rigor of the ANSI-CFP accreditation, ensuring that the exam accurately measures a candidate's ability to navigate the real biological hazards of a commercial kitchen.
We broke down the intense psychology of the day itself. The fast-paced review, the cognitive load, and the secure lockdown of the digital testing environment.
Don't forget the parking lot panic study.
Oh yeah, the parking lot panic. And we looked at how organizations like HRB Universal navigate the fluid, crisis-driven logistics of the hospitality industry to keep this vital pipeline of certified managers flowing.
It is a continuous, invisible effort to outmaneuver the natural degradation of our food supply. Every regulation, every test question, and every strict operational procedure exists to prevent a biological threat from reaching the consumer.
It really makes you look at your local diner or your favorite fine dining spot with a completely new level of respect. For you listening, the people running those kitchens are executing high-level, scientifically backed protocols every single day.
Their competency is the invisible shield protecting public health.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought experiment. We spent this entire time talking about the immense legal and operational burden placed on the human person in charge.
The human element.
Right. But technology is advancing incredibly rapidly. We are starting to see the introduction of smart kitchens.
Oh, yes.
We're talking walk-in coolers with continuous digital temperature monitoring that ping your phone if the temp drops. AI-driven cameras that track hand-washing compliance at the sink. Even automated fryers that physically cannot undercook a product.
It's all becoming automated.
As the physical environment becomes more intelligent and capable of autonomous monitoring, will the FDA food code eventually shift?
It raises a profound question about the future of liability. If an AI system is monitoring the biological vitals of the kitchen with perfect accuracy, does the legal requirement for a human to be present at all times remain necessary?
Exactly. Decades from now, will we even need an event like the July 20th class at the 4 Points by Sheraton? Or will the person in charge just be an algorithm?
It's entirely possible.
It's definitely something to ponder the next time you sit down, look at a menu, and wait for that perfectly cooked meal to arrive. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the hidden architecture of food safety. Keep asking questions, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.